So why climate positive? This slide, or rather the right portion of this slide, is what climate positive is interested in. As of 2 years ago, we hit as a global community an inflection point. 50% of the world's population now lives in cities. We anticipate that by 2050 that number will be 70%. We, in this room, as part of the C40 workshop, we understand how important cities are to climate change, how significant they are in terms of the amount of emissions they produce, and therefore we have this double challenge: rapid urbanization and climate change. This speaks directly to what Dr. Tang was just speaking about, specifically in China, but is similar around the world. And this leads to a very logical conclusion that eventually, perhaps not immediately, but eventually, the growth of cities must more than offset their emissions. This is a simple conclusion. It's wildly aggressive, but it's where we must ultimately end up if we are not going to constantly be taking 5 steps back for every 1 step forward that we take. So it is the vision of the Climate Positive program that we will reinvent large-scale urban communities to reduce greenhouse gases and redefine cities. More specifically, we are interested not in this program, we are interested in large, urban, mixed-use real estate development projects, not 1 building or 2 buildings, but multiple buildings, 50 acres, 100 acres, 200 acres, 3,000 acres. That is the unit of analysis for this program. The idea is that if we can influence how projects of this scale are developed, specifically with respect to their climate impact, then slowly, eventually, we can have a meaningful impact on how cities grow and the carbon footprint of cities. So what's our approach? We are interested, or rather we have developed and are developing a network of leading communities reinventing cities. We have 18 Vanguard projects. They will be demonstration projects, not just in a global sense, but very much in a local sense, to demonstrate to other developers in their communities and in their regions that this type of effort is feasible. They will have an integrated and holistic approach to design and development. The key word here is integrated, which we expect will be quite different from standard design and development procedures. They will be catalysts for leading edge technology, and most importantly, they and the program are developing a global standard for measuring success, or more specifically, we're defining what it means to be climate positive. So what is the challenge? The challenge for many developers and for municipalities is one often of skill set, but there's a first order challenge before you even get to skill set, which is actually of semantics. This is not a small challenge. At this unit of scale of a large urban development, there is no common definition of what it means to be sustainable, nor is there a commonly accepted definition of what it means to be greenhouse gas negative, carbon zero, or any, pick your preferred term. Among other things, for cutting edge developers, and I want to be specific here, I'm not talking about the bulk of the development community as much as I'm talking about progressive developers, their architects, and their consultants, this presents a marketing problem. Marketing is important here. If there's no common definition, if you look at the scale rather the universe of projects that are out there, and there's some fantastic work going on around the world, not just within climate positive projects, you'll notice that in every case, you have developers and their subcontractors who've had to define for themselves what it means to be sustainable, evaluate investment opportunities for carbon strategies based on that internally defined strategy, and then market that strategy to the world. Explain to the world what they've done and why they are so wonderful. And they are wonderful. But then that gets lost in the noise of other projects who followed other processes and have other definitions. This is inefficient from a global perspective. And we lose a lot, not the least of which there's a tremendous loss of environmental value to the local municipalities in which these projects are built and to the world at large. We want projects to be aggressive, for developers to be aggressive and reach an aggressive standard. And even leading edge projects are feeling their way slowly in how aggressive they can be. And it would be a lot easier, a lot more efficient. We would reach the efficiency frontier, to use an economics term, much more easily if there was a commonly understood definition, a target, a benchmark, or a standard. So what does this mean for us? For the climate positive program, for climate positive projects, we ask our projects to be net greenhouse gas negative. Net greenhouse gas negative. This is an aggressive ask. We don't actually believe, we are not naive, we don't actually believe that currently with today's technology that this is feasible for most projects. So it's an important part of our program, an important part of our benchmark, that we not only allow for, but encourage local offsets. And by that I mean carbon strategies that the developer would be responsible for catalyzing in the surrounding community that would be credited to the project's carbon balance or greenhouse gas balance. This is not just something that we do to make it easy. This is something that is fundamental to the philosophy of the program, because we are interested in municipal growth, and anything that asks a developer, any request on for a developer to have an impact on the larger community means that there's a carbon impact on for the surrounding municipality and the surrounding communities. And we are ultimately here because we are interested in the growth of cities and the carbon impact of that growth. So this program is fundamentally an exercise in making sure that large urban real estate development projects, new projects, greenfield projects that represent urban growth have a community scale greenhouse gas impact. So I want to apologize for the simple math, but this often causes a lot of confusion. So this is a fictional project, an oversimplified carbon balance on the left side of the screen for a fictional project. Above the zero, you have 4 units of greenhouse gas liabilities. These are emissions. Below the zero, you have 7 units of greenhouse gas assets. So this fictional oversimplified project has a greenhouse gas balance of -3. That's all we mean by greenhouse gas negative. Let's peel the onion just a little. Let's pretend this project actually has 3 units of project scale greenhouse gas assets. These would be things that we consider intuitive, that would actually happen inside the project. Solar panels, waste to energy at the project scale, something that consumes either at maximum consumes or rather demands or supplies the resources resources at the scale of the project. So for instance, if you have, if the project requires a 400 megawatt plant for power, if you were going to segregate that from the grid, then that would be project scale. Anything below that is project scale. Anything above that would be more than project scale. This developer is even more aggressive and decides to develop community scale assets that address the carbon needs of the larger community, develops those assets, and therefore develops offsets and generates their 7 units of carbon assets. Notice I haven't talked about any particular strategies. We don't care about strategies. What we care about is outcome, quantifiable outcome, not prescriptions. We have no biases. We expect that for something like this to be globally uniform, that it will have to be locally dependent. In other words, whatever works locally, whatever works for the local environmental context, local economics, the developer chooses that path, makes appropriate investment decisions, and finds a way to succeed. Many paths to achieve climate positive. So this is, again, a very simple target, a very flexible target, because we allow the developer to choose the path, and we allow for carbon offsets, but it's also very aggressive, and we recognize that. And it's simply not feasible to consider a project like this without intensive, comprehensive, integrated planning. We need to move away from a development paradigm where we have open and linear systems where resources come into a project and a development and then go out. Energy, water, waste comes in and goes out, and everything is designed around that. We need closed-loop systems. We need integrated planning. We need projects that evaluate the assets that are around in the surrounding community and take advantage of them. These 5 sectors are what we ask our developers to take ownership for in terms of the carbon streams coming from these developments. That's what I mean by the entire infrastructure. It's not just about the buildings, it's about the water infrastructure. Importantly, it's about the transportation infrastructure and emissions from transportation, waste, and energy. So if we think about where we are as a conventional city, a progressive city might have a few of these projects. A climate positive city, which is well into the future, we would imagine would require every new development to be a climate positive development. So very briefly, we have 18 beacon sites. We hope they're transformational on a global scale and inspirational to their peers. These are where they are. I just want to talk briefly about 2 of them, as they are very different from each other and serve as helpful comparison. Dockside Green, many people have heard about. They've done a tremendous effort marketing their project. It is a small project, only 15 acres, a private developer in a Western context, rather in a North American context. They've done many wonderful things that I have no time to get into here. For the purposes of this conversation, they have built a district energy system on their facility, which is unusual in North America for a real estate developer. Not only have they built it, but it's 100% renewable energy, a renewable energy source, even more unusual in North American context. But most importantly, from a climate positive perspective, they scaled, which gets the least amount of attention, they scaled that district energy system to serve the surrounding community, to supply anchor tenants that they identified before they built the system. And as of this summer, they've successfully contracted with the first of those clients. When that system is fully operational and fully serving the surrounding community, and when that project is fully built, it will be greenhouse gas negative for the simple fact that they are exporting renewable energy and replacing fossil fuel energy in the surrounding community. The Magok project in Seoul is a completely different project. It's much larger, it's 840 acres, it's a municipal project, so it's a public project, unlike Dockside Green. It is developed, it too has a number of strategies that it is employing, which are fantastic. In a nutshell, they are meeting they are below 50% on a whole series of baselines at the project level, not just at the building scale level, relative to the surrounding community and the rest of the country. Again, from a climate positive perspective and infrastructure, although we are working with them to expand their reach into the surrounding community, unlike Dockside Green, where they developed all the infrastructure on site themselves, they are tapping assets in the surrounding community, most specifically their district system. I apologize for focusing only on district systems, but their district system will be 70% fired, if you will, by the local municipal sewage treatment plant with sewer waste heat that will provide 70% of the heat in that plant. So they have very proactively worked with other city agencies in very difficult conversations to make sure that they have they are taking advantage of local resources. In short, we hope that all these projects are transformational on a global scale, that they will set this benchmark, and that we will transition to a climate positive world. Thank you very much.